Lisa Akeem, 196 Norwalk Avenue, Bristol.
What's your last name again?
Akeem, A-C-H-I-M.
Is the little green light on at the base of the microphone?
Yes, the green light is on.
No,
Yes, just speak right into it.
Speak right into it.
Okay, did you miss anything? All set?
No, we're fine.
Okay. Now, my concern is no mention of Beck Center, which is a pre-K that's on the same wing that they're trying to make the probate court. So they're going to, we're told that they're going to put a wall between them. There's 4 pre-K classes that exist right now. It's the first year they did that. We were mostly a Stafford school, but when they did pre-K, they changed to kindergarten, so pre-K had to get moved out. So they brought 4 over there, and we're calling it Beck Center, Bristol Education Center. I think Bristol Early Childhood. The thing I'm worried about is safety, about having all these people coming in. And there's kids that are only 3, 4 years old, and they're also kids who have special needs. And having all these traffic people coming on, and I didn't see the plan exactly, but we also, that bus route, we put the bus there. That's how we get the kids getting off and on. We also, this plan and having probate court is going to jeopardize our play area for the kids. And the kids are going to be exposed to people coming in and out. So to me, I personally concerned about the safety of the children at the Beck Center, which is the same side that this probate court is going to be. So where is the kids going to play? How are we going to get them back to the playscape safely? And that's my concern, is the safety. And I'm concerned the fact that it was never mentioned, and we're saying something about the senior center. And when someone who wrote in the newspaper where the probate court was going to go sometime in December, had a picture and only showed the side of the senior center and nothing about the pre-K side, which is, pre-K, which is the first year here. So it's my concern is of safety. And as for me, as a resident too, that it's going to cost $600,000 for a pre-existing building, which Bristol has a lot of land that's available down on North Main Street and stuff like that. So these are my concerns, and I object to this plan because of the safety of the children that's there.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Sir.
Travis Helming, 246 Stafford Ave.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Helming.
You pull the microphone up because we got to get you nice and loud.
I'd just like to know, I forget what his figure was exactly. I think he said 169 parking spaces, I think is what he said. From what I can tell, none of them are fully utilized. I think there's 3, at the moment, 3 parking locations. 2 of them aren't accessible off of Stafford Ave. The lot that's on Stafford Ave isn't really fully utilized ever. Just wanted to know if it's been thought about, can we do something else as opposed to taking more land? Also, there's already existing issues with the garden people there utilizing that area and driving over the lawn and going in and out of that area. It's not very well designed or planned as far as when they put that in. And to note your trip light, according to Bristol Traffic Department, they said that they did not have the funds to replace that loop 5 years ago. So that's why it's on timer. I think it goes on 7:30 in the morning and comes off, it's pretty early, about 4:30 at night. And that's why it's not operating properly. Supposedly there aren't funds for it. Which brings up another question, resurfacing the lot that's going in. Although Bristol doesn't recognize it as a official road, it is technically a road because there's access, I don't know the address off of Stafford Ave, but on the other side, so the right side of 240, there's a garage access there, and we have access off of 240 and 250, or 246 and 250 Stafford Ave. So I was wondering what the plans are to get that resurfaced. It doesn't seem like there's, I like to call it that Bristol's kind of shoved it to the side and doesn't really recognize it. I know they finally did some investment as far as the building, roof, and siding and things last year, but there's a big fight as to whose responsibility is Public Works, the Board of Ed, because Board of Ed officially owns it, doesn't have anything there, so it doesn't really have any interest to be involved there. I guess that's my concern. I'm not in favor of it. I'd really like to see an assessment, or maybe there's already one done, as to utilizing existing parking spaces better as opposed to spending these funds on putting this in.
Thank you. Before you step away, just for my own curiosity, 246, where are you on Stafford Avenue?
Immediate left of the entrance of the light.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak against the application at this point? Sir, would you like to address the questions?
Yes, I did write them down. Forgive me if I miss one. By all means, if you just bring it to my attention, I'll try to answer it as we go along. With respect to the issues associated with interaction between the probate court and the other users of the building, I would say that the city has coordinated this with Board of Ed. So there is going to be a separate entrance. Which kind of ties into the issue of existing parking facilities. Their need for this parking lot is really to get the patrons of the court, which just by their very nature are typically, elderly, closer to the building. There may be excess parking in other portions of the building, but in order to make it handicap accessible and to stop people from having to walk across the entire facility, really drives the need for a parking parking lot close to the main entrance of the probate court.
Excuse me. You said that the majority of the folks who would be going to probate court are elderly. Is that what you said?
I didn't say. I don't think I used majority. I guess I based that on my own interaction. Being in this building, there are in general a lot of older people that use the building, that use probate.
And you said there's going to be a separate entrance for the probate court?
Yes, it's completely separate.
Can you access from the probate court area, the area where the pre-K kids are located? I mean,
No.
I don't have any sense at all of how they're located in the building. You can't get from one to the other.
Correct.
One area.
Yeah, there's going to be no internal,
no internal connection at all.
Correct.
Is there any consideration given to, and I didn't see any, sometimes we'll get plans that have, signage. There is one sign for handicap, but like as far as denoting that this is exclusively for probate court parking, because then that maybe would, kind of help with the separation, trying to address the comments that were raised. I am concerned about what the folks are saying, especially because trying to keep the separation between the young children and the probate court. Maybe some signage or something. Has any of that been considered? I didn't see it in the package here.
It's not included in the package, but I do think that's a very good point, and we can certainly incorporate, a sign into the project to clearly delineate that it's for probate court parking.
Right, and then secondly, to the other residents' concern, if there's all this other parking, and I'm looking at one of the drawings here, it appears as though there's quite a bit of parking on this site. Has any consideration been given to that, since we're building some new parking closer to the building, maybe some of the existing parking that's out there, ripping that up and maybe topsoil and seeding it? In other words, kind of trading parking areas from one place to another to return some of this parking to a natural state, because we're actually putting it closer to the building now, kind of to address the concerns that were raised?
We can definitely look at that. In order to do that, we would have to do a more comprehensive parking needs study for the other facilities. Certainly there are peak events at the building, in particular associated with the senior center facility. We can definitely look at that.
Okay, and just
trying to say, to make sure, and I believe it appears as though from some from the residents, or the fact that the parking lot was there, is proposed there to begin with. I would say that there's some existing trees that we're maintaining, which in this particular resident locations somewhat blocks the parking lot. We can definitely add more, landscaping. So I think potentially some of the concerns from the resident wasn't necessarily the increased parking, was where it's going. Once again, that's really driven by the location of the probate court itself.
Okay. Again, I appreciate the comments. I'm just trying to address the concerns that were raised because it does make sense, trying to keep the separation between the young children and the court. And then also, if we're putting more pavement, why not take out some of the pavement that's there that you might not need? So just some considerations. Thank you.
I have a couple questions, and maybe it'll clarify because I never taught there, but I've been in the building several times. If you go to the center, now where the roundabout is, if you go in the roundabout, that used to be the entrance to Westwood School. If you went in there and went to your right, that's where the daycare center is now, I presume. Am I right on that?
I believe so.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, unless they've done something a long time ago, there's a chain link fence around the daycare to protect the kids, with a shed on one side of it, if I'm not mistaken. What's the stop? Are you going to put something, that's a long hallway, is something going to be put in there to stop either side from combining with each other? You said that, no one from probate will go to the rest of the building. How will we stop them inside? It's a corridor.
Can I interject?
No, literally blocking them.
No, that's why that's the question I asked.
Right, and what was...
He said it was literally blocked off. You could not get through.
It's a little...
If I might interject. The commission's jurisdiction here is limited to this parking lot. That's what's before you this evening. Does the parking lot meet the zoning regulations? And it's not to suggest that concerns that have been raised aren't legitimate. But the manner in which the patrons of the probate court and other users of this building will be separated from one another is not the jurisdiction of this commission. The only thing before you this evening is this site plan. I think that I'll get to it later on, I think that the suggestion that this parking lot be clearly signed that it's being used for probate court only, that's a site plan issue. And it certainly speaks to some of the issues that members of the public have raised about keeping people separate and the fact that there's an existing parking lot. But otherwise, it's really up to the Board of Education and the City of Bristol and the probate court to address the issues that people have raised about what happens inside the building. Mr. Rogozinski has indicated to you that there will be an internal separation. That's certainly more than he had to indicate to you, but it's a question that was asked and answered. But your jurisdiction is really kind of limited in this instance.
Okay, let me ask a question about the outside then. Is the play area for the kids clearly defined? Is that a legitimate question? Can I ask that question?
I think it's
part of the site plan, right?
Well, what's part of the site plan is the parking lot.
Just the parking lot?
Just the parking lot.
Okay.
About the safety of the kids going.
The only issue, ma'am, the only issue, and I'm not going to have a long distance discussion, the only issue, I think it's fair to say that the commission is empathetic to the concerns that the public has raised. However, this commission's jurisdiction is limited in this instance to the site plan that is before them, that's proposed on the site. It's not to say they shouldn't be concerned about the safety of people, whether it's children or adults, as they use this area, but your jurisdiction is really, does the site plan meet the regulations? Does it fit into the overall scheme of this site?
Well, if it's...
Well, we're going to give you a chance to speak in a minute, ma'am. Shall we do, we might as well do the second, might as well do a second round. Are you all set, sir? Okay. So let's do a second round. I don't think we had anyone that came up to speak in favor of it, but we had two people that came up to speak against it. If you would like to come up again and speak a second time, please feel free to do so. State your name and address for the record, please.
May I look at the picture? 'Cause I have no idea what it looks like. I'm Lisa Keene. So where's what? Where's the Where's the senior center side? So where is the business? Okay. All right, so basically where I come in, the kids are right over here, right?
I don't know that.
So for all this traffic, doesn't show me where the kids are going to come in and out, so the safety part of the kids. So we're talking about this parking lot, where are the kids going to go? How are they going to show that about the rest of the people, the kids? Is that supposed to be a concern as well? If you're moving all this, what's their entrance of our door? Or you said you're moving the buses where we have? Where's the bus that you said you were talking about?
What I said is to orient people to the building. Stafford Avenue is off the map over here. Pull in, and there's a loop.
This is the loop?
This is the
Okay.
loop. This is the loop. The proposed parking lot is towards the left of the loop.
Okay, so buses come in. Our kids are right here. Parents will meet the kids. So what about all this traffic flow when the kids get off the bus? The stop sign, you can't pass the stop sign. I don't know how many senior centers or driving by, I don't know how many times for on safety issues. We have unloading the kids off the bus, the stop sign's on. And the kids, people already a couple senior centers, they just pass right through it and go around that loop. They're supposed to wait. So how's that going to work if they have a meeting at a certain time and the kids are getting off the bus? You can't pass. There's an entrance right here. So the bus goes right here and they go back out. So actually this is going to intervene the buses. That's a safety issue. Because you can't pass the bus if the stop sign's on. So...
And ma'am, I don't think anybody is suggesting that people who are going to use this parking lot are going to pass the bus. I presume they'll be bound by the same rules and regulations that anybody who would use that turning area will be bound by.
So it's been about a year now. I don't know how many senior centers already have passed the bus. And then they just go through it. So basically, it could compromise some danger right over there. Because it's right here. The entrance of what I use is right here. And there's the entrance right there. This is the bus route. This is for our buses. It comes morning, afternoon, afternoon again, and evening. 4, because it's pre-K. So there's 2 shifts. So how are we going to... So it's going to interfere, and it's going to mix in the flow with kids walking.
Well, why would kids walk into the parking lot?
Well,
if I understand correctly, the bus will stop at the entrance.
Not all kids go on the bus. The parents will drop them off. So right now they go over here, they're going to walk over here, and that...
But if they're going to walk into the main entrance, why would they walk past the main entrance into the parking area for the probate court?
And
that's not an entrance into the building.
What about all that extra traffic and people exposed to kids?
What about it? Why is that any more or less dangerous than...
Well, as well bring my kids to Hartford and have all...
Oh, what's that?
There's a lot of traffic. It's bringing out a lot of traffic towards the main entrance of the school.
Well, it'll bring certainly some additional traffic, there's no question about that.
Well, what about safety?
Again, the bottom line question for the Zoning Commission's consideration is the design of the parking lot, whether or not it meets the regulations.
Is it going to be safe for the kids, design for the parking lot? You have to consider...
If the parking lot meets the zoning regulations in terms of its design, then the Commission's authority is limited just to that. That's all it's limited to.
So it's only limited to all the grass and the land and nothing around it?
It's limited to what's shown on the site plan, the parking lot. That is this board's limited jurisdiction in a matter that involves just the site plan. That's the cold, hard reality of the law.
So the actual safety of the kids is really Board of Education.
It's not that it shouldn't be a concern, but if you wanted to deny this application based on public safety concerns, you've got to have some basis for that. You can't just simply say, well, we think it's unsafe, or a member of the public has said it's unsafe, so therefore we're going to deny the application. That's not to say you can't take safety into consideration. If someone came to you and said, we know there's this many buses, we know there's this much traffic, we know that in the last 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, there have been 15 accidents out there. If somebody has a basis for that they can demonstrate to you, not just that they believe it's unsafe, but that they can document in some way, shape, or form that it's unsafe, you certainly have the right to take that into consideration and, more importantly, reject the application because it violates a fundamental principle of zoning to protect public health, safety, and welfare. But that's a very broad generalization. But you can't, you would be hard-pressed to reject a site plan if it meets the zoning regulations in terms of its design requirements, but have nothing to support a denial based on the fact that a member of the public, well-meaning that they may be, says, I think this is going to be unsafe. If you feel it's unsafe, terrific, but you better have something to back that up, because, and if I might, this is a situation where the city happens to be the applicant. If this was a private party, and they said to you, this meets the regulations, we feel that there's nothing here that's unsafe, and you said, we deny it because we think it's unsafe, and you end up in court, what the judge is going to do is say, where on the record do you have supporting information to support your decision to deny the application? Again, your jurisdiction on a site plan, unfortunate as it may be sometimes, is very narrowly defined by the law.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just maybe add some clarity to, or at least answer some of the Commission's concerns. Simply put, the proposed probate court is reoccupying space that's currently utilized by the Board of Ed. The city has been working with the Board of Ed, on this, project. Quite frankly, Board of Ed staff has not raised their concern that the citizen, is raising. They're going to be separate entrances with a separate parking lot.
So let me ask you a question again. Who is ultimately responsible for the safety of the kids at the school? Is it the Board of Education?
Well,
If it's a Board of Ed program,
And the only reason I'm saying that,
I would direct, the citizen to potentially get more satisfaction by going to the Board of Ed.
and the only reason I'm saying that is if you take, for example, Hubble School. Hubble School is a nightmare for buses and things, but they have that so worked out now that they have no problem at all. And that's all I'm saying. If the Board of Ed is involved with this, and they go over there and take a look, it won't take too long before they'll straighten everything out. I'm just kind of asking on the QT, who's really is it the city?
Let me put it this way.
And I know
tell you
it's
whose jurisdiction it's not, and it's not this commission.
No,
and I know that's harsh, but this commission doesn't have jurisdiction as to how the Board of Education operates the building. And I presume, and Mr. Rogozinski I'm sure can either confirm or deny this, that the parking lot that's proposed wasn't designed in a vacuum. I presume that the Board of Education or their representatives were, because this is the building is under their jurisdiction, I would presume that they are aware of the design, and again, I'm presuming that if they felt that there was a safety concern here, that they would have spoken up. Maybe not, but I would think they would. And again, I don't want to put Mr. Rogozinski on the spot, but again, I presume this wasn't designed in a vacuum. The city board, the Public Works Department and the Engineering Division didn't just unilaterally go out and say, we're going to design a parking lot without telling anybody.
Question, did moving the probate court drive the need for additional parking, and that's why this lot is being put where it is?
Yes.
If So you wouldn't have enough parking there if you didn't add those spaces that you were putting in. This is not something to just put it closer for convenience, for example. That's my question, you know.
I think it's a combination of the two, you know, to get parking close to the, you know, building entrance that's going to be utilized, you know, for the probate, and, you know, also provide, you know, sufficient parking, standalone parking, so we wouldn't encroach on the other facilities as, you know, need. I mean, the additional parking, you know, on the other side was constructed in 2000.
No, all I'm trying to get at is, do the regulations require the city to put additional parking in because they're putting that facility, that probate court in, or is this just being added because of convenience? Can you answer that question?
The
regulations say you don't have enough parking if you put probate court there?
The regulations, yes, the parking lot is required for both capacity and for, you know, to get the parking and nearest the facility that's, you know, going to utilize it. The zoning regulations don't specifically have a square foot per parking lot count for probate court, you know, for courts, such as they have for more common, you know, establishments such as, you know, retail or manufacturing or warehouse or things like that.
Is there someplace else on the property where the additional spaces could be added other than right in the front of the building, close to the entrance? Did you look at any other areas within the...
Only on a very preliminary basis, because, you know, once again, you know, that's the wing where the facility is being utilized. We actually want to, you know, promote, you know, a separate activity, which is why it's on the, you know, the end, you know, of the unit. The parking is primarily proposed right in front because that's where the main entrance is.
Let me just tell you what my thinking was going when I asked that question, is that if that by putting it there, the people who are going to probate are going to have to drive their cars in front, you know, across the front of the building, the entrance where you have the pre-K to get to that parking lot. So one could argue that by putting it there, you're creating a safety hazard. If there's other areas on the property where you could put those 16 spaces, it's 16, isn't it?
It's 16.
Somewhere else on the property, then you wouldn't be drawing traffic in that direction. They'd be going a different way to get to those 16 spaces. I recognize that
just for the record, I don't acknowledge that our parking lot and the separate parking lot, 16 spaces for a probate court, poses a hazard to any other portion, you know, in traffic flow within the facility.
Well, that's what we're trying to get at.
The department has coordinated activity with the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed staff has not raised this, you know, as a concern. Based on the traffic flow of the probate court, I do not see it as a concern.
Yeah, and I back that up by looking at this. It says the police department had no issues. I mean, safety, I grant you safety is a big concern, but safety is a big issue of the police department. If they saw a safety issue, certainly they would have noted it.
Can I point something out too? Then the back is an entrance over here. This is where the entrance of the probate court is going to be. So there's parking back here, and there's a side street right here, and you can come right in here. So there's a lot of some parking there. And there's like a little land over here, and there's some trees. So instead of having them coming in this direction, why can they come to the back and they could come back over here? And our kids are from this side, the senior center's over here, and some seniors park over here too. And there's some building over here, I don't know if it's apartment buildings or so. But today I had to drive back there because senior had a bowling league with weed, so we parked and there's a side right here, and it's private. It's away from the school. You can't see anything there. They're coming from there, and then this is where they're going to be. So there's parking back here, and there's access to the road already. But there's no light. But there's a light here, but there's no light here, but there's an entrance there. And there's parking. It cuts right through, and there's other access. So is there any way we can shift it?
And again, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, please understand, no one is discounting your concerns. The Commission's jurisdiction is limited.
Okay.
The commission doesn't have the ability to say, oh, move it over here, change it there. This is what the applicant has presented to the commission. The commission's jurisdiction is limited to, does this plan meet the city's zoning regulations?
Zoning, okay.
Okay, that is all this commission can be concerned about, okay?
Zoning.
Part of the broader context is public health, safety, and welfare. But as I said before, and I'll repeat, the commission can't simply deny an application for a site plan simply because they have a feeling that it's unsafe or it might be unsafe. They can't do that because they need to have a basis, and kind of an empirical basis to take a position like that. And that's not to diminish the concern you're expressing, but I suspect there might be people who would get up and go, you know, there isn't really an issue here. People have to watch out, but there isn't as big a safety issue as being made out. So there may be more than one side. If you were able to come to the board and say, look, there's been 35 accidents here that we can document, and this is just going to make it worse because it's another curb cut, then the commission has some basis to consider that maybe this is not the safest place. But in the absence of that, they're limited to, here's what's on the drawing, here's what's proposed, does it meet the city's zoning regulations? Policy issues about, should the parking be here, should it be someplace else, should it be turned?
So you're concerned about accidents, but not people body-wise. So the figure of people, because when he presented this whole thing, he didn't say anything about the pre-K side at all.
Again, ma'am,
okay.
The presentation, the proposal is for parking lot associated with the probate court. That's what the commission has to consider this evening. That's the limitation. They don't have, when it comes down to a site plan and what's on a plan, the commission's jurisdiction gets really narrow.
So now, the thing is, as a public, we were not known that that was going to happen. We had no issues. We did not, as a person, to speak out. So this is totally different. We can't change anything of that. But how do I speak out? We never had a chance to speak out for the probate court or our issues.
Well, that I think you'd have to bring up with...
Where?
With well, it's the Board of Education's building.
Correct.
Indicated. I presume the Board of Education was involved in the decision.
But not public hearing.
Well,
okay.
But you understand, this board's jurisdiction, not just with this, is limited to its jurisdiction.
Okay.
It's not I hate to say it, it's not an opportunity to, you can certainly come and talk about anything you want, but this isn't a city council meeting, it's not a Board of Education meeting where there's a wide range of topics and the jurisdiction may be somewhat broad. This board's jurisdiction is defined by state law, and in the case of a site plan, is very narrow. Again, it's not to diminish your concerns, but the board can't address, the board's ability to address your specific concerns is very narrow, to the point of almost being non-existent in this instance. That's the law.
Well, I'm trying to protect all these kids. So I would like to know where can I go to protect them.
I would talk, if the Board of Education owns and operates the building and they operate the activities in the building, then I would suggest talking with the Board of Education.
It seems very secret because when the article was on, so how do we make the public know?
You need to talk to the board. We can't solve that problem this evening.
Call the mayor.
The Board of Education has jurisdiction on the operation of the building.
Okay.
The only purpose of this is, will the zoning commission approve or not approve a plan for a parking lot in this location? The policy decisions associated with where it goes were not made by this board. This board is reactive to what it has in front of it. That's the limit of its jurisdiction.
Okay. And the mayor already knows. Thank you. That's their item.
The other gentleman still has his right to speak. Sir.
Travis Helming of 246 Stafford Ave. Just as a question, seeing as how we got so off topic and talking about a lot of other stuff, what activity does the Board of Education currently have that is under its jurisdiction at 240 Stafford Ave?
I think the Board of Education is going to have to answer that question.
Yeah.
That it's not the jurisdiction of this commission.
Understood, but I'm just asking, because you're going on and on about they don't have jurisdiction and everything else at the Board of Education. I'm just making a point that currently we're talking about 3 different things that the Board of Education has nothing to do with, other than potentially her program, which is kind of a side note, but we're talking about putting a probate court in the Board of Education's building. And I know it has nothing to do with this topic, but I just find it interesting.
But it's not this board's jurisdiction.
Understood, but you said we could talk about anything, so I'm talking about anything. So my question...
Let's put it this way. People end up coming here and talking about a lot of stuff, and I understand people get frustrated because they can't understand why this board can't do something. And the answer is because this board's jurisdiction is defined by law and is limited in its scope.
No, I understand.
So,
moving past that, because you said that they're limited to basically approving this based on whether it meets zoning requirements or not, does it matter that there's more than adequate parking on this facility? Can they approve it or deny it based on that?
I think if they were going to do that, they'd have to provide a justification for it. Any decision the board makes, they've got to be able to provide on the record.
I'm asking the question because you said that their job is to approve it based on zoning requirements only.
Right.
And zoning requirements, there's no argument.
Well,
I can't argue anything because zoning-wise, you could make the whole spot a parking lot, and I couldn't say anything. You're cut and drying it, and I'm asking you to get down to the cut and dry. That's my point.
And you're correct. If the city came in here in this instance and said, we want to take all the green space up and put down parking, this commission, as with this, their jurisdiction is limited to is what's on the plan, does it meet the requirements. They don't make that policy decision to pave over the entire site. They don't make that decision. They may not like it, and the standards for parking and the zoning regulations are minimum standards. They're not maximum standards. So they're allowed to have more than is required under zoning.
Okay. Just to ask a question, if somebody else came with an application as far as like the commercial entity, the commission would make a determination whether or not there was sufficient parking or not, right? How is it different in a case like this? And what I'd like to know is basically, has there been a study done to determine how many people there are or aren't? I know he said that there's no standard set for probate. We've been operating probate here for how many years? We don't know how many people park here. We don't know how many probate, I don't know, judges or legal people that you need. It just kind of boggles my mind that, okay, I understand your question was, is it for convenience? I think there's more than adequate parking. You're going to say, prove it. I'm going to say, well, prove to me that there's not.
And again, the answer to the question is the zoning standards for parking are minimal standards. If someone's proposing a use that requires X amount of parking by regulation, they cannot provide less than required, but they can require more than required. So take an example, if I had a 20,000 square foot shopping center and I need 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of shopping center, that means I need 80 spaces. I can't come to the commission with 50 parking spaces, but I could come to the commission with 150 parking spaces. And if I can fit it, as much as we may not like it, if they can fit them all on the site, meet the zoning regulations, meet the standards for lighting and landscaping and all, the commission may want to encourage them to provide less parking. They can't deny an application because it has more than the required amount of parking. They can deny it if it has less because then it doesn't meet the regulations. So in this instance, they have more than is required, or they may have the exact amount. If this adds additional parking, they're entitled to make the request. I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's the answer. Again, the board is bound by the law.
I understand. So it seems like a very big double standard that the city has versus what a resident has.
No, it's the same standard. I'm sorry you may not believe that it's the same standard. And trust me, as someone who's looked at site plans for a long time, serving this commission and other commissions, I can tell you there's plenty of times when we see site plans where there's more parking than we might like to see, and we may try to encourage an applicant to reduce the amount of parking. But if the applicant is insistent, if it meets the regulations, and the applicant is insistent on providing 80 spaces when they only need 60, we can't tell them that they can only have 60.
All right. Nothing else to be said.
Commissioners, do you think that we've heard enough to close the application at this time? Yep, looks like. Okay.
Believe me, I apologize for being long-winded, but I understand the concerns that neighbors have, but, and I know I'm going to say this for the 20th time, your jurisdiction on any site plan, as also the case with the Planning Commission, is limited to what's on the drawing here in terms of the design. If you feel that there is a safety concern, it's been raised by the two people who spoke against the application. If you feel there is a safety concern and feel that you can somehow document it, or feel that it can be documented and want that information, you can certainly request it. If you feel you need that information and you feel that that information is going to be helpful to you in making a decision, you can certainly ask for it. I'm not sure who you could ask Mr. Rogozinski on behalf of the applicant to provide it. So you certainly have the right to ask for that, but I think in the absence of that, if you feel that, well, there may be some, this may be justifiable concern, you got to have something to back that up. If you do act on the site plan this evening, that's entirely up to you. As you can see, we have been through 2 staff reviews. The 2 remaining staff comments. One of the comments that Mr. Rogozinski addressed was, or spoke about, was the lighting. We've asked to see, and I believe there's a detail of the lighting fixtures, but the pole height is not indicated. We need that information along with the photometric drawing to make sure that that it meets the lighting requirements. But there is lighting shown on the plan. The second issue was a recommendation, and again, if you look at if you have the plan in front of you, you'll notice that a little more than half of the spaces have the sidewalk immediately abutting the parking spaces, and you'll notice that the 4 or 5 spaces at what would be the north end of the parking lot closest to the building, the sidewalk is set back 6 feet. Again, it's not a requirement, which is why we didn't indicate that it's required. From a design standpoint, if it were possible to move that sidewalk so it abuts along all the parking spaces, so that people park in those spaces when they move forward from their space will be onto a sidewalk, that can only be accomplished on about a little more than half of the spaces. Mr. Rogozinski has indicated to you that there are grading issues associated with that, with moving the sidewalk forward rather than keeping where it's shown on the plan. Again, it's your call. If you feel that you want that sidewalk to be consistent along the entire front of the parking, you could ask them to go back and redesign that to make that happen. If you're comfortable with what's shown on the plan, again, what's on the plan meets the regulation. But if you're comfortable with what's on the drawing and want that kind of jog in the sidewalk, then so be it. We've just simply offered that up as a suggestion for the applicants and the Commission's consideration. If you do act on the site plan this evening, And if you do choose to approve it, we would suggest two conditions of approval. One is that the plan not be signed off till these remaining comments have been addressed and the plan revised. And the second thing, which comes out of the discussion this evening, we would suggest that you consider a condition that the parking lot shall be designated by signage for use by the probate court only. I think that was a concern that was expressed, and then the plan would have to be revised to reflect that. So glad to answer any questions you have on the application.
Commissioners, are we set to close? Appears that, all right. I'll entertain a motion for application 2191.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close the public hearing on an application 2191.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Roll call vote from my right, please. Commissioner Scritorro?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaplinsky?
Yes.
Commissioner DeMastro?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
And chair votes yes.
The only thing that I would add is, I don't want to belabor this anymore because I think we've all heard enough, but in addition to the signage that we talked about, is there any way to, at this level, at a site plan level, to try and somehow improve the signage to address the public's concern? It really does bother me that I know that it's not our jurisdiction, I understand all that stuff, but again, I don't want the public thinking we're just here as a rubber stamp commission. I want to show that we were, and then I think by doing this one thing about some specific signage, I think that's a good first step, but I just wish there was some more we could do. As far as signage goes,
Well,
that is under our jurisdiction.
I'll be honest, I think, personally, I think the most effective thing that can happen is that the folks who spoke this evening very passionately about this issue pursue it with the Board of Education. And if it is, in fact, if the Board of Education feels, hears from enough people that this is a concern, I'd like to believe that they're going to be responsible and responsive enough to address the issue. Certainly, we can have a conversation with staff of the Board of Education. We're glad to do that. I'm not sure how effective that's going to be. Frankly, I think when it comes to issues like this, I think sometimes the best voices to hear are the voices of the public in the correct forum, which I think in that instance is the Board of Education. Folks who spoke this evening were very passionate about it. If there are other people who feel the same way, again, this didn't happen in a vacuum. I don't think the Board of Education is going to go, gee, we didn't know there was a parking lot being proposed. I presume they're aware of it. Again, we'll be glad to, we will reach out to the Board of Education staff and indicate to them that as part of the conversation this evening, the issue came up. That's about the best that we can do. I think neighbors and other interested parties should, they feel strongly about it, and they obviously do, is don't let it go. Don't walk out of here going, geez, they didn't take care of the problem. You need to go to the people who can take care of the problem or the issue, and that's the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Comments? Ready to?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve application 2191, site plan for parking for government facility, probate court at 240 Stafford Avenue, with the following stipulations. The site plan shall not be signed off until all remaining staff comments have been addressed and the plan revised accordingly. The parking lot shall be designated by signage for use by the probate court only.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Roll call vote from my right, please. Commissioner Scritorro?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaplinsky?
Yes.
Commissioner DeMastro?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
No.
Chair votes yes. So the application is approved 4-1.